when the world has got you down. And
Alzheimer's sucks. It's an equal opportunity disease that chips away at everything we hold dear. And to date, there's no cure. So until there is, we continue to fight with the most powerful tool in our arsenal, love. This is Love Conquers Alls, a real and really positive podcast that takes a deep dive into everything Alzheimer's, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And now, here are your hosts, Susie Singer-Carter and me, Don Priest.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. This is Susie Singer-Carter.
And I'm Don Priest, and this is Love Conquers Alls. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Donald. Happy V-Day to you.
Happy V-Day. Now, by the time people are listening to this, it might be next Valentine's Day.
It might be Easter. It might be next Valentine's Day.
You never know.
It'll be
so
soon.
fill in whatever...
whatever holiday
Yes.
you're celebrating.
Exactly.
Happy anniversary. Happy love.
Exactly.
Happy love.
Happy birthday.
Love conquers all. So it's all about love, right?
Happy Love Day.
So I have something to reveal. You ready?
Uh-oh. Here we go. What
We
is
were
it?
talking about love.
Yes. And...
Ta-do.
Oh, my goodness.
Can you see
Look
it?
at that.
What does it
Yes.
say?
Now, I have seen it in person. It does
Yeah.
say love is power. We add the full to it, the power full, but love is power, and it definitely
Love is
is.
power.
And that is an amazing, and that's real. That's not Hannah.
It's real.
I
had
did
a
it, I
rites
did
of
it myself.
passage.
Yeah.
Don, you're so talented.
I'm so talented.
If you're not watching, it's a tattoo that I got on my arm that says "Love is power," and it has cute little flowers, like flower power flowers. It's very not traditional tattoo. It's very me. It's like It looks like a rainbow of colors. It's like
Yeah. I tried
And
to
I
get her
love-
to do an anchor on her bicep, but she refused, so she got this instead.
I could if I'd get like a turquoise one or something like that.
Yeah.
But I got to work on my biceps because
Exactly. You got to make it jump.
I'm going to tell you something about love since it's Love Day. And so, do you know Albert Einstein, who was, purportedly not the nicest person, not the most lovey-dovey human? A friend of mine wrote a spectacular screenplay based on his life. It's just incredible. So I got a lot of info from there, and she's an amazing writer. But on his, like about a week before he died, he wrote this amazing letter to his stepdaughter, and he said, and it was all about love, and he said, throughout all his years of study and being academic and pragmatic and, all the science that he did, he's came to the conclusion at the end of his life that the most powerful force that we have on Earth is not atomic, it's not electrical, it's not any of those things man-made, it is love. And love is the most powerful tool that we have in the world, and you can't buy it, you can't package it, you can't recreate it. It is what it is. If there is love, it's authentic. If it's real love, and it is powerful, and people need love. So he said to her, "I know I haven't been the most loving stepfather, but before I leave this world, I wanted you to know how much I love you." Which was a huge thing for him. And I just find that so moving and so powerful, when you come...
Probably the most important thing he ever learned. Mm-hmm.
So when we say love is powerful, it really is. It really is, like everything that we do that's significant or profound or in our purpose it's always motivated by love.
Because without that, what does anything mean if you don't have that in your life? How important are the things you have, or the fame you have, whatever, if there is none of that in your life? So,
well, you can't share it with anybody,
right?
Unless you're sociopathic, like my ex, but
which can be fun.
There's always good fun in a sociopath. You can find some good fun. They're very charming.
It's a party.
they're very charming. No, but yeah, I mean, who knows? All I know is that most of us we thrive on love, and that's a good thing. It is a equal opportunity if you're a good person, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So
it's what this whole podcast is based around. I mean, it's kind of in the name.
It's kind of in the name, and
Yeah.
and also, you know, it's apropos because we have a guest today, and I love her so much.
I know. We do love her.
I love her so much. She's such a force in our community, and also now in my life. And I just think why we haven't had her on the show like eons ago. But you know, like nothing's a coincidence, as Rick Montcastle says. So there's a reason why she's here today. We'll find out. But I love this woman so much. She has been a beacon of light for me and for you during this whole thing with our documentary. She's been such a support and such a she's just given us a lot of guidance too, and also she's funny, super funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say.
And,
Well, you're going to find that out too in moments.
We're going to find out. Yeah, she's the best.
She's going to do her whole stand-up act. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, she doesn't know that yet, though.
No.
So now, no.
We'll do some
right,
improv.
So Donald,
Yes.
start introducing one of my favorite people.
I'm not only going to start, I'm going to then finish it too. So
Good.
Here we go. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, then I'll just tell you. For more than 5 decades, Kathy Bradley has been a powerful voice in long-term care. Since 1975, she's served older adults and individuals with developmental disabilities in roles ranging from direct care to executive leadership, including 23 years as a licensed nursing home administrator. After navigating her own mother's rapid decline into severe dementia, Kathy founded Our Mother's Voice, turning personal heartbreak into national advocacy. CMS designated her as a subject matter expert on behavior as communication in dementia. She has testified before Congress, shaped national policy through the Consumer Voice Leadership Council, and now she has joined the advisory committee of our very own Roar Movement for Long-Term Care. We are honored and excited.
Thank you, God.
Yes, we are definitely honored and excited and thrilled to welcome her today. So let's say hello to Kathy Bradley. Hello, Kathy.
Yay!
Hi, Donna, Susie, and my goodness, that's a lot to live up to. But I'm glad to be here, and the love is mutual. I think so much of
Thank
you,
you.
Susie, and Don. I've gotten to know you too, and think an awful lot of you as well. You guys
Thank
are
you.
great, and I'm delighted to be affiliated with Roar and No Country for Old People. I just am really glad we found each other.
Hallelujah.
Ditto. The feeling is mutual. The feeling is so mutual. Kathy, you are such a beacon out there, and you're so authentic, and it's something I admire so much because there's bad agents and there's good agents in our community, in every community, right? Where there's good, there's bad. It's yin and yang, and you keep that authenticity and integrity wherever you go, and so having you standing by us is so meaningful because everything you stand for is authentic, and down to your own nonprofit that you have, Our Mother's Voice. And I think it just blows me away, and it raises the bar for me to want to be like you, to create whatever we're doing with Roar, to be on the same standard that you have created with Our Mother's Voice.
Thank you. Well, I'm, as I said, so delighted that we found each other and excited about the docuseries and the reach that it has, and will continue to have. It'll continue to grow as we continue to get the word out and reach audiences that don't know yet that they need this docuseries. They need to be involved in advocacy. And when I was telling someone just the other day, you gotta watch this docuseries. It is hard to watch. It is a hard watch, but it is essential. And I told the person, when you see it, you'll think, this isn't true. This is made up, because it's so horrific, the treatment that people in long-term care receive. But I said, I assure you it's real. I assure you it happens. And a lot of what happened to your mom, Susie, happened to one degree or another to my mother. And so when I was blessed to be able to see the screening of the film early on, I said, I got to know that girl. So
I'm glad you did.
Too.
I'm glad you did. So let's segue into your really rich past and how you ended up, develop or launching Our Mother's Voice. So, but I want to hear about your story with your mom and what your origin story is, because this is why all of us do the hard work, because it comes from love and it comes from wanting to have the next generations a better road, making a better road for them.
Right. And my story, I suppose, begins with the fact that I was born to my parents. And I'm not going to take you through all those 70 years, but I will tell you that my father gave me a steadfast faith and a firm belief in right. My mother gave me not only that same firm belief in right, but also the knowledge of the power of speaking out for those without a voice. And growing up in a small southern town in the 50s and 60s, everybody knows the environment that was, and we certainly had a lot of opportunities to use our voice and to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. Fast forward through all of that to 2009, when my mother suddenly declined into severe dementia after spending her lifetime being a voice for those without a voice. And the first thing dementia took from her was her ability to speak. I had retired 6 weeks earlier from providing long-term care and knew the system, knew the regulations, knew what was supposed to be happening and what wasn't. And having been a provider of long-term care, I knew how to make it happen. That's what I spent my career doing. And it was hard for me to get my mother what she needed. It took months. It took relentless struggle. The environment that she was in, from the bottom to the top, saw me as a troublemaker, saw me as not knowing what I was talking about. And at one point told me I just needed to be the daughter and let them be the professionals. And I told them at that time, I said, apparently you don't understand what it means to be the daughter in my family. I am being the daughter. This is what we do. And I will continue.
I love it.
Until my mother and everybody in her facility has the care that they're supposed to have. And we did. And eventually we were able to effect culture change in Mama's facility. And sure enough, her quality of life improved, as did that of everybody in her facility. One example that I use is easy to understand in this very complex realm, and that is that Mama had urinary tract infections and dehydration every 6 weeks, obviously not getting enough fluids. Obviously, people weren't paying close enough attention to what was happening with her. And often it ended up with hospitalization, with IV fluids and IV antibiotics. For about 2.5 years, the first 2.5 years of her stay, and had I not stayed on top of the staff and insisted on her first having a urine test done to find the infection, and then being admitted to the hospital to treat it, Had that not happened, she wouldn't have lived. But after 2.5 years and a pretty bad compliance survey from the regulating agency, changes started to happen, and they implemented a real, they called it a hydration program. Now, in many facilities, a hydration program is you set a cup of water, a styrofoam cup of water with a straw in it, next to the bedside table or on the bedside table, and you call it hydration program. Well, of course, people with dementia, they can't grasp it, they can't suck, and if they do grasp that cup, it's styrofoam, they're going to squeeze it, and the water's going to go everywhere except inside them.
In their mouth. Mm-hmm.
So, but after all of this, their hydration program was having an actual person go around and not only provide fluids, but make sure that the fluids got into the person's mouth, swallowed into their body. They actually were hydrated from it. And Mama didn't have a urinary tract infection or dehydration the last 2.5 years of her life.
Oh, bless you.
From
Isn't
something
that
that
amazing?
simple.
Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So that just tells you right there. It's like all those things that, and I was told that it's inevitable. UTIs are inevitable. That's what happens when people get older. And if you don't know, you don't
That's
know.
right.
If you don't know, you say, oh, well, yeah, my mom's suffering from UTIs, and apparently that's what happens when you get
Because
that
those
age.
people are professionals, and they're the ones that are
Right.
explaining this to us, And
Right.
most people fall for that.
Right.
I didn't.
Well, yeah, because
They also
I
don't
did.
seem to know the symptoms, like
Right.
what's happening. Hallucinations and such. It's like, because my mom is now in this situation, and she's
goodness.
had many UTIs, and we have to we go, wait a minute. She also has Parkinson's dementia, so sometimes it's hard to suss out what is what. But when we see changes, they're with them every day. They should notice changes in somebody when there's something that might be wrong here. Oh, I don't know. Let's just do a test. It's just that simple to find out.
And of course, then there's this standard of practice that says, oh, don't just willy-nilly give tests. Check all these signs and symptoms first. And if none of those exist, then don't bother. It's not that. Well, my mother had a low basal body temperature. Hers was at least 1 degree lower than everybody else's in the world. And so when her temperature was 99, she had a fever. But you see, 99 is below that threshold. And it did not matter how many times I reminded the staff of her low basal body temperature, they dismissed 99. Mama also became lethargic when she became ill. So she wasn't fidgeting, she wasn't non-compliant, she wasn't combative, she was quiet. So
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
they were
good for
fine
them.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were fine with that. Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
So
Right. Except everything.
Except everything.
But
Exactly.
finally, they began to recognize the individuality of Mama and everybody else in that facility. They began to recognize the value of having as consistent as possible staff assignments so that people who worked with Mama knew her and
Right.
could then respond when something didn't seem normal for Mama. Not normal for everybody, but normal for Mama.
And she knows
That is a
them
big
too.
issue, right?
She
Yes.
knows them, which is so important, that there's a connection. Because when somebody new comes in every time, it's just another face and voice, and they don't connect at all. And that's part of living, is having that connection.
it's such a big issue too about one size fits all with everybody, and it doesn't.
Right.
So when you have, if you have a regulation which is ridiculous, that a certain, temperature, it's only when you have that temperature, it doesn't work. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
It just isn't.
Right.
And so, it comes down to anything, even cholesterol.
Yeah.
Some people's cholesterol is at a high level and they're very healthy and it's fine. There's just, you cannot treat people like a statistic. You can't.
I had Richard Mollett from the Long-Term Care Community Coalition, and I had this thing, and he actually, I think, stole it from me, but that's okay. I gave him permission. Where
it's the highest compliment.
And I said, people are not widgets.
That's
and
right.
you can manufacture widgets to the exact same specifications, and there's your standard. But human beings, each one is unique, and that's a good thing. But you have to pay attention to what is that unique individual's normal situation. And you have to also understand that people with dementia do not necessarily exhibit typical signs and symptoms of illness, like mama getting quiet and not running a so-called fever. Those are not necessarily normal. A lot of times people complain when they don't feel well. Mama was quiet, So,
right.
So,
and sometimes they can't. They're not verbal. They can't
Exactly.
complain. They can't complain.
although mama communicated now.
Oh no, they communicate. They communicate, but again, it's not. Those. So people don't speak their language because they don't have time to look closer and to actually learn the language. That's the problem.
Which is
the problem.
Non-vocal behavior. It's just telling people
You can
with
look in
their
their
actions.
eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. If you know them.
Oh, I
but
can
that's
tell.
if
I
you
had
know
whole
them.
conversations with my mom.
Yeah.
But you have to know
That's
them. That's
right.
part of it. I mean, we're not warehousing people.
Right.
Well, it's called a nursing home, and it should be a
Yes.
house. It should be a
And it's
home, and we think
their
it should
home.
be treated as such.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Was this Medi-Cal
right.
facility or a Medicaid or facility, or was this a private?
This was actually, it had been a 100% private funded facility. They had just recently begun to seek Medicare funding for rehab services. They did inpatient rehab. They just started doing inpatient rehab. And I took advantage of that because I knew those federal regulations. The issue is that often providers do not want to participate in federal funding because they don't want to follow the regulations. But the regulations are a minimum standard. They
And
are
not enforced.
And they're
And
not
they're not
enforced. You're
enforced.
absolutely right. unless it is forced upon them to enforce. And I took advantage of my career of knowledge when I confronted Mama's poor care, tried going through the organizational structure and literally went through the entire structure from bottom to top unsuccessfully, and ended up filing a report with the state survey agency that surveys for compliance. And because of my career and knowing the regulations as I did, and having received the survey reports and responded to survey reports for many years, I was very familiar with the process. And so I got the regulations, and I had 30-something pages of documentation, went through the documentation, matched the issues up with the regulations, and listed by category the regulations that were being violated, and then referenced examples of the violations that I had seen. And that informed the survey. And just going through that process, it was very time consuming for me, but how could the regulators not follow up, knowing that there was somebody out there that had all of this documented
Right, they
so
had to.
precisely. Yeah. It's like we were talking about families coming into facilities during COVID. That makes the staff behave. Well, me taking that volume of stuff that I had that was so well structured and presenting it to the surveyors, the oversight body, they could not do something. And so
Right.
that's that. And in fact, that is a technique that I teach to families who contact me
Just
for
going to go
consultation.
there. I was just. That's what I was just going to go there. I was going to say, okay, most of us, I'm going to say like 99% of us don't have that experience that you come with, right? And that expertise. And so, like for me, as an example, I had no idea what I was up against, right? I just knew I was being gaslit. I just knew that they were saying one thing and then doing another. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know there was an ombudsman program. I had no clue. I didn't know who to turn to. I think there was one organization that I was told about, and they're like, well, we don't really help with that. And no, I just had no idea where to go. So cut to you launch Our Mother's Voice, and this is what you do.
Yeah.
You help people navigate,
That's right.
Which, guys, this is such a gift, because if I knew Kathy then, imagine how different my trajectory might have been, because I just didn't know. And that's, what you don't know. You don't know. And they bank on the fact, that you don't know, and that most of us aren't going to go to the surveyor and, even know what a surveyor is, for that matter. And that there is this program, and that this is supposed to happen. And, we have no clue. We're so vulnerable, and we feel impotent. I know I did. I felt completely impotent.
I liken it to when
and-
you go into with your car into a mechanic. And if you have zero knowledge, they know it. They can tell you anything, and you're like,
oh yeah.
But if you know,
like, oh,
it's a whole different experience.
That's right.
And
it's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hopefully a
I
different
use that
outcome.
example, but I have to confess, I do it on a gender basis. It's like when a girl takes the car in, it's all right, honey, we'll take care of it. When a guy, they come in with the assumption that the guy knows what he's
That
talking
you have
about.
some knowledge. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So my apologies for the gender bias, but
But no, even saying a few key words. I mean, I'm dealing with a lot with my mom right now. I'm not going to get into the details, but I do let them, whenever I'm talking to them, I let them know that that I co-produced this little documentary called No Country for Old People. I might have some knowledge in this area, and it does make a difference.
Yes, it does.
It really does. Now, whether you get results out of that, that's another story, because that's a whole nother level of. But at least it gets you in the playing field.
right.
So yeah.
And if you know what's right, you know the regulations, or that that there are regulations that you can look up, and I do that for families. I don't expect them to be able to go, oh, that's from the CFR, and that here it is, and here's the web address, and here's the regulation. I do all of that for them, up to and including identifying which regulations are pertinent for their situation, pulling those out, highlighting the specific parts of the regulation that apply to their case, so that when they go to the leadership of the facility or above or outside to the regulating agency, they're using that language.
So can we put this into like an everyday situation for the people that are novices like I was? Because when you're saying all this stuff, and maybe someone that's listening right now is going, all I know is my mom is thirsty all the time, and I don't even know what any of like regulations are. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what a DON is, which is the director of nursing. I don't know who the administrator is. How do you get an appointment with them? All these things, like there's so many, steps and cogs in the wheel that we don't even know about. So first, let's go back and explain what Our Mother's Voice is, and how and what you provide, and maybe we could go. I would love to just say, here's a situation. How would you guide somebody like me through this. Yeah.
All right. I established Our Mother's Voice in 2010 while we were going through our issues with my mother. And this was at the point at which we had just had our conversation with the Survey and Certification Agency. And they had come in to do the survey, which had been informed for them by the documentation that I had submitted to them. And lo and behold, big surprise, they found the same issues that I had delivered to them were systemic. And honestly, in my conversation with the administrator prior to taking that route, I told him, I can choose to look at this one of two ways. Either you have a systems issue and you need to fix this for everybody that lives here, or you have singled my mother out for this treatment. And that's a whole nother conversation. I am choosing to believe, and I actually do believe, that it is a systemic issue. And I'm giving you the opportunity to work on that and fix it.
To rectify it, yeah. What did they say at that point?
Not much. And there was no response in terms of addressing the issues. And that's why I decided to go to the survey agency. In fact, after I didn't get response from the administrator, I then went to the medical director and the CEO of the organization that owned and managed the facility, and the board of trustees of that entity, and none of them found what I had to say of interest enough that they did anything about it. So that's why I went to the survey agency.
This is typical.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it
this is so typical, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember many of the CNAs when I was there asking me to help them with my mom because they were understaffed, and they would tell me, they'd say, we're understaffed. If you could just help me with your mom, I'd say, okay, sure. I left a man I got to hurry because there's a man on the toilet that I left in the toilet. This is what they do. And then they didn't have any pillows to prop my mom up. Not pillows, but pillows and or wedges that you're supposed to have. They didn't have anything. And this is a 5-star facility, folks. And and they were taking dirty blankets and rolling them up like this, and they were like, "Here, can you put that in this a pillowcase?" And I go, "But it's
wet.
It's dirty." It was wet. And so the next day, I went over to IKEA and I bought a bunch of pillows, hard pillows, and I was walking in with my big old blue IKEA bag. And the administrator, the director of the facility came up to me. She said, "What are you doing? What do you got there?" And I said, "Oh, I got pillows so we can prop people up." And she said, "Well, we have pillows, Susie, thank you, but we don't need them." And I said, "Well, apparently you do because they don't have any. Because the CNAs say you don't." She goes, "We really don't need those." It was like, they'd rather be performative and make like everything's okay instead of being honest and saying, "You're right, we are."
But they also denied that they were asking you to help them. They denied that it happened. You happen to have it on video. It's in the documentary of them asking you to do it. And you got, and a letter was written to them by an outside source, and they just denied they just said, "Yeah, we know all about Susie and her mother, and we don't see anything here or anything
We don't
wrong.
think there's any problem."
There's no problem.
And
Well, and I feel
that's the problem.
Yeah, it is. And I feel compelled to say here that we are not talking about 100% of nursing facilities in this country. Of course not,
yeah.
But we are talking about a phenomenon where, in fact, if it was just Susie's in my experience, it would be too many. But as it is, it's in facilities in every state in the country. Not all facilities, but it is something that happens every day throughout the country.
It's the majority,
facilities.
though. It's more than not.
And that's been my experience. And of course, the people who contact me, getting back to Our Mother's Voice, are the ones that are experiencing these issues. But again, I've been doing this in one capacity or another for over 50 years now, and I've seen it. And I use my experience to help other people navigate this extremely complex, extremely opaque, anti-transparent arena, because I know how complex it is. And if I have trouble, my goodness, Jane Q. Public doesn't have a chance. And so, in fact, Our Mother's Voice was born out of a conversation that my little sister and my dad and I had once we started to see the beginnings of change in Mama's facility. And my little sister said, how do families that don't have somebody like you ever get their loved one the care that they need? And of course the answer is they don't, and they don't even know that they can.
That there's they don't even know there's a problem. That it's a problem. Exactly.
Yes.
They don't even know that.
And what about those who don't even have families, who have
exactly,
no advocate?
and that's
And
where Mama's advocacy would have come in. And we even talked about moving Mama, and I told them that won't fix anything. We might be swapping for different problems. We might just be swapping for a different location for the same problems. But we all agreed, the three of us, that Mama would not want that. Mama would want to advocate for everyone in that facility. And my dad said, we're going to get your mother the care that she needs. We need to also be advocates for everyone else in that facility. And my 86-mile ride home that night, I could not get that conversation out of my head. And when I got home, I had a very clear understanding of what I was being called to do. And when I parked the car and burst through the door into the house, I announced to my husband, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to establish a nonprofit. I'm going to call it Our Mother's Voice, and we're going to give families the information they need to empower them to advocate for the care that their loved ones need. And so that is exactly what we did. And we have been doing that work since 2010.
So incredible.
Doing individual consultations, giving people the information, encouraging them to use the language that the providers will know. They know what they're talking about. Be in their cheering section, encouraging them, letting them know you're right. What you're seeing is what you think you're seeing, and here's some information. Here's what you need to approach this and get some action. And some families, once they have that information, that's all they need, and I never hear from them again. Sometimes I'll, shoot them an email, hey, it's been 6 months, hadn't heard anything, and they'll go, oh, everything's fine. I did what you said, and everything's fine. Other families, other families, I have to shepherd for years, and I do that. Sometimes it takes hours of research to put together a package of information for them, and I have to give it to them in small doses, because they're not used to any of this language, much less 30 pages of it. And so I'm with them. What I don't do, though, is boots on the ground, standing next to them in the administrator's office, although I have been on the phone in a couple of administrators' offices if need be. I'll do that. The other thing is that not every facility, as I mentioned earlier, participates in the federal funding program. And so in that case, they're governed only by state regulations. So I have to research whatever state somebody lives in and find out what the regulations are, and then go through those regulations and identify which regulations are in violation and how the family member can approach to let the facility know that they know better than what's going on. I do tell people it is always helpful to know the federal regulations, or at least to know how to access them, to be able to understand the federal regulations, because state regulations, whether it's nursing home, assisted living, community residential care facility, whatever, they're based on, the state regulations are based to one degree or another on the federal regulations. So if you have an understanding of what the intent is, which is reflected in the federal regulations, then you can use that information to empower speaking about the state regulations. And so we do all of that work for individual families throughout the country. And however long it takes, we're with them. We also do presentations, both online and in person, for groups large and small, wide variety of interest groups, to educate folks about long-term care and what should be going on in any long-term care setting, and how they can be an advocate and support change.
Amazing. Just because this is also so amazing, how much do you charge people for this service?
And I always forget to tell people that.
Yeah.
You're burying the headline.
Yeah, really.
You buried that.
Bury that lead. Well, and,
I mean,
I had a career, and I am retired, and I don't need money for what I do. I do it because it needs doing, and I can do it. And the people who need my support, my services, really are struggling enough already. They don't need to try to figure out how to come up with money to pay somebody to tell them what the federal regulations are, to encourage them to be an advocate, to reassure them that they are correct in what they feel creepy about. They need somebody to walk that journey with them and not have to worry about paying for it. So I'll do it because it needs doing.
It's wonderful.
How about that? How about that? Isn't that amazing, you guys? I mean,
So it's coming
there's not
from
a lot of-
the right place. What you do is
That's
coming
what I
from the right
said.
place. Yeah, there's no other motivation than
that's
just
the
to
bar.
help. Yeah.
That's the bar.
And this
bar.
goes back to ever since I was born, I guess, that my parents instilled in me that we are here. Goes back to the beginning of the broadcasting. We're here to love. Mm-hmm. We're here to love one another. We're here to help. And from early on, if anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, or what I wanted to do when I grew up, or after I began my career, what I envisioned myself doing 5 years from whenever that was, the answer was always the same. I don't know, but I want to help people.
Yep. That's so cute. Can I tell you something? There's a wonderful podcast, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, called Wiser Than Me. And if you haven't listened to it, I don't know her. Maybe she'll have me on one day on her podcast after I hit 70, because you have to be over 70 to be on her podcast. But she always has these amazing women that she talks to, because they have so much wisdom, and so thus Wiser Than Me. And she had Jane Fonda on, and Jane Fonda was talking about her life in 3 chapters. That's the way she defines it, in 3 chapters. And when she started her 3rd chapter, when she turned 60, she said, she really figured out the definition of each chapter. It was very clear to her how life in her mind it played out. So the first chapter up until you hit 30, or you're sort of kind of pleasing everybody, trying to figure out how you fit in, where do you go, like who, how can you be the most successful and have everybody love you or whatever you want, but it's usually not your authentic self. And then in your 40s, 50s, you're still trying to, whatever you've committed to, now you're going to make it happen because then you've committed to it. And by the time you've got to your third chapter, you sort of go back to your authentic self, who you ever were when you were a little guy, little girl, right? And she said, and that's when you become your authentic self, and that's when you find your purpose, and that's when it's a comfortable fit. And exactly, no surprise, what you just said. It's like me when I was a little girl. If you asked me, of course I would said, when I was 5, I would have said I want to be an actress. A movie star, a ballet dancer, a veterinarian, and I want to help people because I love people. And that's what I wanted to do. So I hear you. It totally resonates with me, what you're saying, because there's nothing better than being in your purpose and making a difference, because that's what's lasting.
Yes.
That's what lasts. Nobody remembers who won an Oscar 2 years ago. Nobody.
Right.
Nobody. It's true. But so in terms of, so here I have a question I was thinking about when you're talking. When people, a lot of times after the fact, people will file a report to the proper service, their offices, whatever they're supposed to file a report, because they've been advised to do that, to see if there's any kind of I don't know, change they can make, recompense, whatever, something. But at this point, their loved one usually has passed away, right? And takes a very long time to get a response when you file a report. From what I've heard from the people that I've interviewed, people that I've talked to on the show, I've never heard anybody say that they've come back after investigating a report and say, you're right, we found that to be a problem at this facility. They always have said, we find no problem, case closed.
No matter how bad it was.
Yeah. So why does that happen? How does that happen? How do we circumvent that? Oh, Kathy. Oh, great, Kathy.
Well, I can tell you that, and I can only go from my direct experience with this, which for the most part has been tangential, kind of observing what has happened to others around me. Investigating entities often, and especially regulatory investigative entities, often put a lot of credence in what the provider tells them. And also often the reporters are family members who are reporting emotionally. Mm-hmm. Because they are upset, they are angry, they are hurt, their loved one is in desperate straits, and all of those are very valid things to think and feel. Mm-hmm. But they don't compose actionable reports. You mm-hmm. cannot act on somebody's feelings. And what I did, actually, when I submitted my reports, I had date, time, names, descriptions of behaviors, quotes in some cases. I had facts. And I also had either copies or transcripts of actual nurses' notes from my mother's file that demonstrated and validated incidents that had occurred. And that, I think, makes a big difference when investigating entities have factual detailed information, it becomes very difficult for a story that sounds good to overcome a detailed set of facts. Now, there are certain, I guess, certain approaches in which people present what we now know to be alternate facts.
Yeah.
Well, what?
But I would hope, and I would argue, that a contemporaneous document that was written at the time that an event occurred, that is detailed, factual, would carry more weight than, oh, well, these are alternative facts.
Right, right.
And I would encourage people, for many, many reasons, but that being one, to make sure that they write stuff down when it happens, and go back and use that. I tell people, saying they're not treating my mama right is probably very true, but that is not something that an investigative entity can grab onto, go into a facility, and investigate. Saying on January 10th, 2008, I witnessed so-and-so caregiver doing this act, in thus and such a room at thus and such a time, that's a very, very different thing. And I will say that there were a few times when I was able to observe from a distance law enforcement coming into a situation. And at least the times that I observed this, they were good at what they did in terms of the investigation. They looked at physical evidence, and they were much more likely to have a finding that was correct and accurate than to just simply fall hook, line, and sinker for what was being fed to them by the party who was being questioned.
Right.
And this also comes
What do
into
you
play
do-
with, I was going to just say, if you end up going the legal route, which you may or may not have to do, and I don't know how you feel about that, but yeah, I mean, it's if you have facts, that's as opposed to they were mean,
Yeah.
Well,
that's not a fact. I mean, it is, but
Two things come.
yeah,
Yeah, two things come to mind for me. First, if you suspect something is off, and you're being told you're not seeing things correctly, you need to act on that right away.
Absolutely.
Like you need to act on it right
Your
away.
gut is
because
there for a
that's-
reason.
Yeah. So you can't. So listen to your gut. Better to have been wrong than and not and talked about than not have been wrong
Right.
and then not talked about it. Right. So for your own sake, if you suspect something and you're not getting the response that you hope for, then you have to take a harder stand. You have to try another route, because if you wait too long, you will be one of the people I described, which is filing a report and your loved one is long gone and they don't find anything. It also gives them time to redact.
Yes. Or worse.
These entities can
Not
right?
only redact, but replace.
replace, because when I got my mom's reports after she had passed, there were days where it said, and my mom at this point, they weren't feeding her. They had her on a feeding tube, which was one of my issues. She didn't need to be on a
Right.
feeding tube, but sometimes it would say breakfast and the aide would have written ate half of it but refused to eat the rest. Well, my mom wasn't eating at that time, just making stuff up.
Yep.
yeah.
Making stuff up, just writing things in, not even,
Yeah. Well,
and
like
so-
your patient, like your mom who had she didn't speak anything. Patient is in denial.
Yeah.
Maybe they meant the river.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Lord.
we could talk about those records all day
Yeah.
long. There's so many crazy things in it. Yeah, we won't go into that. But what if what can we expect? Like if we take it, no, let me back that up. What incentivizes the entity to make a change? Like what is the final thing that incentivizes them? Because from what I gather in our documentary, it's very hard to incentivize them to make any change, even if it's obvious, right? Because of other forces,
Right.
financial,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so what incentivizes them? Because it feels like that we're the cards are stacked against us.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people who work in the field of long-term care, who provide the services, who want to provide good services, who are there because they care, and who end up burned out, frustrated. In fact, if in some cases, I know of situations where a direct support staff member, a caregiver, has been excellent at what they do, and they are shunned by their coworkers. They, they're all the work is dumped on them because it'll get done, and if she's gonna, complain about us, we'll show her, that kind of thing. So at
Retaliation.
At the direct care level, it's hard to do the work as it is. When that kind of thing happens, it's even harder. And you hit it on the head, I think, in terms of the biggest challenge, and that is financial. Sadly, we're seeing more and more that corporate ownership is coming in, and their bottom line is not how many people's lives they improved, but how much money they made, how much profit they made. And, there are numerous studies and exposés that have come out in recent months, the last couple of years, that have actual emails from one party to another that talk about saving money and cutting costs. And that is the measure of success. And there's tremendous pressure on the administrators of the facilities to cut costs and increase profit. And of course, the facility doesn't see that profit because it stays up top. And so, in defense of some administrators, they may not even know that they're being ripped off. Yeah. and that money needs to go to direct support staff for caring for people. And, fines and even court settlements that would wipe us out don't matter because it's cost of doing business.
It's in
to
their
the
budgets.
Corporation. Yes.
And the fact that many of the administrators don't really know.
Yeah, and that's
they're
only
not
an assumption on my part based on the fact that I am around administrators from time to time, and they don't seem to have that grasp of the bigger picture. They're very much focused on their facility, and what corporate is telling them is that they're losing money, and they are at a loss themselves to understand why, because they're cutting all these costs, and they see the impact it has on care, and they are not happy about that. But then again, they don't want to lose their job either, so they're between a rock and a hard place, and it's tough. So without financial costs that are far greater than the budget line item for cost of doing business and paying off lawsuits, they're not incentivized to change necessarily. Of course, we had the guy that ended up in jail from his fraud with big nursing homes in one of the states in this country, and he is not there anymore.
That's right.
And until at that level, there are some real consequences: loss of freedom, loss of money, loss of ability to do business. Unfortunately, that's what it's going to take in a lot of cases. And
So in our case of like the everyday person, I feel like our strongest tool or armor in our arsenal is our mouths.
Yes.
And being vocal and being educated and vocal, because at best they're just going to want you to shut up and
yes.
right and not cause trouble. So that is your best tool now. And in the meantime, we are, Kathy and I and Dawn and a whole bunch of cool people that are so great who have been doing this forever are trying to make real change so that we shouldn't have to take this into our hands. This should be an outlier that things like this happen, but it's not. It is not. And so, but I do think that, walking in prepared like you prepare these folks and having all your, P's and all lined up, and you will go in and they're going to go, oh God, this person is going to be a pain in our butt. Let's just get this done. Right. So, I mean, that's the best you can do, but and it's not about going in with guns blazing, because that's not going to do anything. They'll just write you off as like wackadoo. So, and they'll be, and they won't listen to you. But if you go in, cooler minds prevail, right?
Right.
And you go in and you're prepared and you speak truth to the power. They're going to want to address it, because they don't really want to get bigger, to grow any bigger, the problem. So they're going to want to get rid of that problem, I think,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what it is, because it doesn't really take away the systemic issues that we deal with, and that everything you're seeing, what you're talking about, is a result of the systemic issues.
Right.
That's why these things happen. That's why they're allowed to happen and do happen.
Yes.
Consistently. It's.
But then on
it
a
is-
practical level, when you're dealing directly with the CNAs and you're dealing with, and there's something going on, and we touched a little bit about retaliation, because people are afraid. I know when my mom's not getting something they need, it's finding that fine line, walking that fine line of being the squeaky wheel, being the pain in the ass, and being so bad that you have to worry about retaliation.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that tells you, here's how you do it? I know there's not one answer, because every
Right,
person's
right.
different, but
And-
if there's
and-
something in that area.
One thing that I did, they knew that I was a retired nursing home administrator. They knew I knew what was and was not supposed to be happening. But what they were surprised at was my stepping in to assist them in lifting my mother, transferring her from her wheelchair to the toilet, for example, helping her get undressed and dressed, right side by side with the person doing the work. I did not, I wasn't going to do their job for them. For one thing, and to protect the facility, because I'm not on their liability, policy. And if they allow me to provide care and something happens, it's on them. And they didn't want that. They were at least aware enough of that fact not to
Yes.
put me in charge of something, But side by side with them, giving them information that they needed to provide Mama with the care that she needed, telling Mama's stories of her life and who she was, because she couldn't tell them, All of those things build rapport with the staff. And of course, I didn't do it for that motivation. I did it because I wanted them to see my mother as a human being. But you can't help but appreciate somebody a little more when you know more about them as a person, and you can't help but appreciate the person who's given you that information, as someone who cares and someone who wants them to know and wants to help them and so forth. So that's ground level, boots on ground, day to day kind of advice, I guess I can give.
I think that's so right. I think that's really important, is to humanize.
Yeah. Also,
is to humanize people.
The staff, the frontline staff, don't always know the regulations.
No, they don't.
I did, and I did not mind sharing with them. There's a regulation about this, and maybe if you're frustrated, maybe you could go to the management and just let them know, I'm worried about being in violation of this regulation. What can we do about this? So there's ways of getting that information to where it needs to be. But each situation is quite individual, and I will say this: our mother's voice does not give advice. We give information. We always tell people, if you need advice, you need to go to the professional, whether it's an attorney or a law enforcement person or a therapist, whoever.
Yes.
But I'll give you information all day long, and I'll give you information about what has worked for me. I'll tell you my story about what worked for me. It may or may not work for you, but I hope that it will be an encouragement for you to step up, to learn more, to inquire further, whatever it takes. And people have different comfort levels. I tend to be, I know y'all probably don't believe this, but I tend to be kind of an assertive person. And not everybody is, and I can give people all of the information. I can equip them, I can be their cheerleader, but I can't give them a personality that will step forward and go, I know y'all are BSing me. That's got to come from them. And I have dealt with folks who've had a great struggle with that last step, But I continue to be a cheerleader for them. I continue to reassure them that they are correct, that they have this information, and it's in their hands to use it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think less of them if they can't get up the gumption to do that. That's their choice. They're the ones that are living this experience.
Indeed, that's a good point. I was just going to say, if you can't be wrong as a caregiver in any situation, because this is just an extraordinary position to be put in. It's so difficult. It's so on so many levels. It's just, and then you're dealing with such high emotions and high. If you're in a crisis situation, it's the perfect storm.
It is.
And you can't fault yourself. So when we're talking about this conversation right now, you're not at fault if you can't take those steps. You're not. It's daunting.
It really is.
It's daunting. I get it. It is daunting.
And
I
always encourage folks to get this information before you think you need it. But that's hard because this is not pretty. Nobody wants to think about getting old, and I know this firsthand.
Nope. I second that emotion.
Here I am at 70. I'm going, oh my gosh. I'm not going to think about that.
No.
So
no,
I
because
get it.
Actually, I am 17 at all times. I'm 17. How old are you?
Honey, I think I'm 70. That's all I can do. But I'm going to be the best 70 I can be, I'll tell you that.
Oh, hell you are. Hell you are.
However, people don't like to think about getting old, being old, needing help. having to let go of control, their autonomy, their agency over themselves or their loved one. And so planning ahead and getting information ahead is the last thing you want to do. And unfortunately, where that ends up putting people is they're in crisis. They don't know what to do. They don't have any information. They don't know where to get it. All they're getting is the line that the facility, the provider is giving them, which may or may not have anything to do with the truth. And oh my gosh, and they feel alone. And that is a horrible feeling to have. It's a horrible place to be. And that's where we meet a lot of people who contact us is in crisis. And so we have to talk through that. We have to find out what's going on. I have to go from, because people call me and say they're not treating my mom all right. And, so we have to start there. And I go, okay, can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with your mom, and just that kind of calming, lowering the pot, the temperature of the pot.
Right. The temperature, yeah.
Helps.
And also you're listening.
Yeah.
You're also listening.
And it might be the first time anybody has.
100%. We could talk for hours. I can't believe that. This is incredible. I just want to say, if anyone is out there, or you know somebody that's out there that is going through this very tough journey, caring for somebody and having that, like you said, icky feeling that something is off. First of all, respect your icky feeling, because it's usually right. Yes. Listen to that icky feeling. I had icky feelings, and that's what pushed me to continue to push, because I knew I wasn't crazy. For a second, I thought I was. There were times, but I'm not saying we're perfect. Okay, don't get me wrong. But I mean, you know your loved one better than anybody else. You know your loved one. They don't know your loved one. So listen. And if you can't do all these steps, that's also understandable, because it's a lot. It's so much. But if you act on it sooner than later, you could make a difference without that much effort, because it could, right? So there are little changes that you can make by just being informed and having that, right? And I think information is key, and that's what you provide.
Yes.
And that's power.
OurMothersVoice.org.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, go say it.
And there's a contact button that's on the website, and it gets you directly to me. And we'll have a conversation. I usually start by email before I just give a stranger my phone number. But we'll work through it the best we can to get folks the information they need, to talk step by step, to walk step by step. And I don't give you everything all at once and just exit. If you want to take small bites and touch base every step of the way, I'm there. I can do that. I have done that many, many dozens of times. And
it's like amazing work that you do. It's just amazing. I can't stress enough. If you need help, then take advantage of this, because there are very few people like this woman out there who not only is she kind and big-hearted, but is actually brilliant and actually knows what the hell she's talking about. And that is a gift. And she doesn't charge you. What goes on? It's like an angel. So I just can't. I feel so excited to bring, to make our audience aware of who you are and that you exist. And there are good people out there that really care. Really care.
Yeah.
Really care. We really do care. So, Kathy Bradley, I just love you so much.
I love you
and
too,
I
Susan.
I just love you for coming on.
I love you too.
And just
And you know why?
Kumbaya,
You know
my
why?
lord, kumbaya, kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya.
And do you know why there's so much
And
of this
by the
love?
way, this girl, wait, before you go there, can I just say, because kumbaya reminded me of this, this woman with this short, gorgeous white hair right here, she sent me a picture of her with hair down to her, past her butt, like she looked like she could be like down at like Peace Love and Woodstock, like with the best of them, and like so hot and so gorgeous. I was like, oh my God, you never see. This is the thing. You never know who people are. She's like, okay. Anyway, just had to say that because kumbaya just made me think of that.
Oh, goodness.
All right. And so let's talk about why Dawn is today so special and why are we talking about love?
Well, because as we've said, we all love one another. We love ourselves. I especially love me. And and the reason for that is that's because love is powerful, love is contagious, and love conquers all. So we thank everybody for watching, listening. If you like what you saw and heard today, please follow, share, tell everyone about it, and also definitely go to roar for LTC.org
LTC.
and join this movement.
Sign up and be a warrior.
Yes.
Join our movement. And if you haven't seen No Country for Old People, do yourself a favor. Do your family a favor. Sit down, watch 3 episodes of it on Amazon, Tubi, or Hoopla.
Yes. And then contact Kathy.
And you're welcome.
And thank
All right,
you
thank
for
you.
the opportunity to be here and talk with you all today. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun.
Anytime.
Oh, our pleasure. Bye, everybody.
All right, take
Love you.
care.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time.
Bye-bye.